Hello, pursuers. Welcome to another episode of the Pursuit of Happiness podcast. I'm your podcast host, Naz Kazimi. We have so many housewives and just Bravo shows to go over. It's crazy. But I'm all caught up. I've watched them all. I've made my notes, and I think it's really helped me out because I'm not going to lie, I've been really struggling lately, mental health wise, and sometimes when I watch these shows it just like takes me to a world where I just forget that I have problems, and sometimes that's nice, right? To forget that your problems even exist. Not that I don't tackle them at a later time or have to deal with them at a later point, but it's just nice to kind of immerse myself in these shows and realize that maybe my problems are not as big as I think that they are, or that you'll get through them because everyone gets through it, right? We're going to start off with the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I just love this franchise. I think that it's really nice and colorful, and I love the colors in it. It just brings me back to how my house kind of looks. Like, for example, in the last episode when Angie took the ladies, which we'll get to, but for that photo shoot, and they're all wearing the colored dresses. I love that. I think everyone that I know that's ever gone to Greece has pulled off something like that in terms of doing a photo shoot. Now, the colors that I mainly see when they do those type of photo shoots are red and blue. But it's just such a nice like background, and it's kind of like a bucket list thing to do when you go to Greece to get these photo shoots done. We're going to start off with the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, season 6, episode 15. Andy crashing into the poor waiter bringing the muffins. Now, if you watch, now this is the very first scene, like literally, you guys, the first 3 minutes. If you're actually watching her, you will see that she is not really paying attention to where she's going. So I feel like the accident that she has with the guy is like kind of her fault, because if you see, like, he's coming from probably around a corner and he has things in his hands, and not that it's not his fault either, like he should have been paying attention, but you can just tell she's not paying attention. I think she's looking at Lisa Barlow or whoever she thought was awake, I want to say, at that time. Regardless, she knocks into the guy and all the muffins fall over. She ends up getting a cut on her lip, and I was just like, I love Angie, so it sucked to see that happen, but it's like, you know, like, look where you're going, girl. Like, the first, 3 seconds of you waking up. Anyways, Meredith wakes up in a great mood. The yo-yo in her attitude is a bit concerning for all the other ladies, as can be expected. Typically, when people have yo-yos in their attitudes and the shifts are so extreme, it does cause for alarm, you know. Me as a former addict also, and mental health being in the forefront of everything that I do literally every day, I've seen this. I know this all too well. Is it always drugs? I don't want to say yes or no. Like, I'm not the specialist. I don't think that it's always drugs. I think sometimes even people struggling really, like, deeply and severely with mental health issues, they will have yo-yos where they go up and down. One day's a good day, one day's a bad day. So unfortunately, this is just how it is with things like this. So it's definitely some factors to look after, and I think, again, when we get later on into the episode, Whitney and Mary do say that Mary, being that her son is going through it, so she's seen the signs, potentially probably ignored them or didn't really make anything of it in the past, but now she's more aware of what the signs are. And Whitney having lived with it with her dad. Addiction is just one symptom of it. I think a lot of it has to do with just mental health, you know. So there's a lot of factors here at play. What it could be for each individual person, you just don't know. But it is alarming when the mood swings are so vast and so quick in between, you know. Everyone has bad days, everyone has bad weeks, people have sometimes bad years, but like, I think when it goes up and down so quickly, it's definitely a reason to be concerned. So this is where the colorful photo shoot that Angie had for the ladies is absolutely beautiful. It's really great. Like I said, everyone that I know does a photo shoot like this. Sorry, my dog's just all over my stuff, so I have to make sure he doesn't get onto my podcast equipment. He just wants scratches, so I got to scratch him with one hand. The ladies notice Meredith's switch in the mood. She's being really happy, and she wants to deflect from the real issues of maybe today, so she just, or what's going to happen today. So I think she's just kind of like putting on not this front, but she, I think what happened was the night before they because the flashback showed that they were drinking, they were having a good time, they were partying with each other. So she's woken up in a mood where she's like, okay, so we can let bygones be bygones, leave the past in the past, and today's going to be a new day where we can move forward. Regardless, again, it's a bit concerning for everyone that notices. But I just think that maybe she had a good time with the ladies the night before, and she's just kind of like wanting to like have a good day moving forward and finish up. There's only 2 days left of the trip, so have a good day moving forward with the ladies. I can't really make a diagnosis, especially on someone like Meredith, because I don't see her day to day. We just see them filming, and just it's such a small chunk of what is required to really diagnose with someone. Okay, so based on what we see is a bit concerning. I don't think it's like drugs concerning, like addict drugs concerning. Could be like she took something and it made her feel a certain way. And I know people take Xanax when they fly, or when they're away from home for the anxiety, or an Ativan or whatever. Do I think that this is Meredith? I don't think so at all. I just think that like she's one of the ladies that really gets spun through the ringer with all the other ladies. So she's kind of on her toes at all times, and she kind of just goes with the flow of the group. Now, with this being said, do I think that she's done nothing wrong, or do I think that she's a saint and all the girls have done stuff wrong? I don't think that at all. I just think that sometimes when you're walking on eggshells around other people to not piss them off so that they stay in a good mood, you're a little bit more like, you kind of adapt, you're like a chameleon to the environment. So if everyone's in a good mood, you're going to be in a good mood, because if you're now in the bad mood, you're going to trigger that person or that set of people or that change that's going to just ruin the entire trip. And I think she's just sick of being in situations where she's always bitched at or made to be the bad person, So yeah, I think that the night before they were having a good time, so now she's awoken and she kind of wants to continue that good feel-good streak. Mary Bronwyn, so after the whole photo shoot, Mary Bronwyn and Whitney go for lunch, and all the other ladies go for the spa. This is where Mary really voices her concern for Meredith. Whitney also agrees. Whitney admits that the mood swings remind her of her dad, who is also an addict. And Bronwyn is kind of just sitting there quiet, which kind of scares me a bit, because Bronwyn usually has the most to say. Okay. She's also known to run to Meredith and to reveal private conversations. So I'm really surprised that Whitney's sitting with her again and talking to her privately again. Or maybe Whitney just understands the assignment. Like, they're on a show together. They're going to have to do this at some point. She's not going to stop talking to Bronwyn if they're on a show together, right? But it is kind of concerning, because the last time they did this, and I think it was at the Boston not so hot tea party or something like that, it was revealed that Bronwyn did the same thing to information that Whitney had given her, and it led into this big kind of thing, which Whitney later apologized for. But I'm just surprised that now she finds herself in the same kind of situation with Bronwyn again. To me, that's a bit alarming. Okay, Mary's being emotional, and I understand it. Her son went through the same thing. And I think maybe it just triggers some emotional, it just has emotional triggers for Mary, because she kind of sees the same thing, or it could just bring up stuff that she had missed in the past with her son. I think when it comes to addiction and mental health, and we all know someone, we all are or know someone that is suffering from issues that are this deep and complicated, and sometimes seeing it in somebody else can trigger back to things that, again, you might have missed, or that you were front row and center to, and it's so touchy. And unfortunately, it's just like death. It's hit every single one of us at some point in life. And Mary's kind of in the thick of it in the moment. It's her only son. I think he's incarcerated at the moment, gone to jail, from what I know. So yeah, it's gonna hit her a little bit different, So then Bronwyn finally decides to chirp up. So Bronwyn sits quiet during this whole conversation, and when she finally chirps up, she says that she and Todd ran into Seth at a restaurant in New York, and Seth said that he was with an investor. But then when she actually looked closely, the investor was a woman. Okay. So there's a bunch of things that I feel like are so wrong with this. Like, why is it that just because he's with a woman, it automatically means that he could be not? No, Bronwyn did not say this. Bronwyn is just bringing it up because she's like, now that like a lot of people have brought up other things, like I just want to say that I saw. I don't want to at some point say that I never saw this. But it's so weird because Bronwyn and Meredith have this relationship together. So why has Bronwyn not brought it up to Meredith quite yet? Because they have this so-called private relationship off camera where they're kind of each other's like gossip diggers, you know? So there's a bunch of things that I think about this. First of all, I don't think Seth would be dumb enough to go up to them if he's with another woman. That's for any reason other than business, because Brahma did say that Seth went up to her and Todd. Hey, how's it going, you guys? Good to run into you guys. And who says that investors only have to be men? Like, investors can be like many different types of people, you know? So I just find it a little bit weird that all of a sudden she's brought it to the table. Or she understands the assignment and she's just doing her role and, you know, being shady. Again, I don't think that just because he's with an investor that's a woman means that he's cheating. But I do understand why Bronwyn would bring it up now, because I mean it's just something to another little flame to add to the fire, I guess you could say. Is that how the saying goes? But yeah. Next it shows the ladies that are at the spa, and I just find Britani just to be so immature. Oh my god. She's splashing all the girls with the water, and she knows she's being left out kind of on purpose. Like, you can see her come into the scene and they're kind of like whispering to each other. So I'm thinking that she assumes that they're talking about her. So as a way to kind of like break the ice and make like the producers love her, she starts splashing her with water. Like, it's just like, this is not like a splash park. Like, it's a spa where they've been told many times, and to, like, you need to be quiet here. This is like where people come for zen, relaxation. It's a meditative type place. And she's kind of making the girls like squeal and loud and like starting to splash water. And I think Meredith nailed it on the head. Britani has never been to a spa before, you know. Then they start asking Britani when they're out of the spa in a whispering voice, like, why are they spraying them? And it's so funny how that they're all trying to like really shit on her, but they're doing it in a whispering voice again because the spa is really like adamant about being not loud. So back to Britani trying to like be this little fun little child. It's like, no, this is not working. Like, stop. So when Britani's put on the spot, she then brings it up like, you guys are supposed to be my friends, but no one once asked me if Olivia had called, and Olivia's her daughter, if Olivia had called me for Mother's Day, and this makes her emotional. And you flash back to Britani being upset on the bus that no one had called her for Mother's Day yet, and all the ladies are trying to comfort her. They're like, it's still so early. It's like morning there. Like, we're a day ahead. Like, they probably are still sleeping. It's not even Mother's Day for them yet. It is sad, and I do sincerely feel bad for Britani. I feel like all these feelings are coming from someplace. And to be honest, like, as much as I dislike her, she's the only one out of the group that really can handle the jokes, and she doesn't really take things to heart as much. But I can't help but feel like she puts herself in these situations, like, and no matter what, she just can't seem to get herself out of them, you know? It is kind of sad. Anyways, the ladies all finally meet up again, and Whitney fills in Heather about lunch. She lets her know that Mary's really concerned as well, and that Mary was actually crying. And Whitney let her know that, you know, like, Mary genuinely cares about her. We all do. And we've just all come to the conclusion that despite us caring and voicing our concerns, no one's actually gone to Meredith directly. I think the problem becomes that this might be something that Meredith might not want broadcasted to the world. But unfortunately, they are on a show together, so there's no other place to bring it or put it up than the show. And I feel like that's why Meredith and Lisa have the connection that they do, because they can take things and not bring it to the show. But then if you look at their characters, they're the most boring characters in the sense that, like, they don't bring anything personal to the table. And that's the issue that the other ladies have with them. They're like, well, if we're on the show and we're broadcasting our live. Now, this can be said for all the ladies. Because some people say that Heather doesn't bring anything to the show. I get it. I'm just saying, in particular when it comes to Lisa and Meredith, these two ladies seem to have this tendency that when things are really, really deep and heavy, they don't bring it to the show. They bring it, like, they deal with it outside of the show. And then when it comes to being on the show, their lives look perfect and dandy and not as complicated, let's say, as it would have been if they'd brought in their actual issues. Hence why it's so weird to me that Bronwyn kept that little piece of information, because her and Meredith do things outside of the show or outside of camera time. And then now all of a sudden Bronwyn brought it to the show. It's a bit shady too. But my point is that this is something I think that even if it's a concern for the other ladies, Meredith does not want to broadcast. Meredith does not want to broadcast it to the world. She doesn't want the world to talk about that she could potentially have mental health issues, or that she potentially could have issues with drugs. And if she does, it's something that she would want to deal with off camera. Because again, I know they're on a show, but there's some things that once you throw out there, you can never really get back, you know? And this might be that point of contention for her. So I feel like this is where it becomes a little bit more complicated with the relationship with the other ladies. Now, Lisa's telling all the ladies that she's obsessed with trees. She has a grounding area in her yard. She says trees have a hidden language and that they all talk to each other. I just LOL'd at this. I'm like, okay, what has she been smoking? Did they give Lisa some mushrooms? But I don't know if it's true or not. It's just interesting to bring up in such a weird time, you know? Lisa bringing up what Meredith had mentioned to her. Britani was throwing up the whole trip. So Lisa brings up what Meredith had mentioned to her on the bus. So now they're on the bus ride. They're headed to, I think, dinner. And Lisa brings up, oh, Britani, I heard that you were throwing up the whole trip on the yacht. Doesn't it seem weird, et cetera, that it's been brought up so much later is what Britani's response was to that. And I also think that's kind of true. Like, why is this all of a sudden being brought up now? But if you look at it closely, Britani calls it out. Bronwyn's the one that probably said something to her, because Britani knew right away. She's the only person that would knew that I was throwing up this much would have been my house or my roommate, which is Bronwyn. And Bronwyn just stays quiet the whole time. In fact, the only time that Bronwyn actually starts talking is when she receives a phone call from Todd, because I guess her mom is moving out of her house that they've lived in for 40 years since Bronwyn was a kid, like a baby. And I'm even surprised Bronwyn took this trip, because that seems like a big move. Like, if my parents moved out of their family home, which, by the way, we never really had a family home. We moved around a lot growing up. If that was the case, I would have really wanted to be there to say goodbye to the home. So I'm not too sure if Bronwyn's going to have a chance to do that later or not. But it's nice to see her talk to Todd. And it's nice to see her say that this is a Todd that no one really gets to see, because I guess Todd got a call that Bronwyn's mom was kind of like a little bit overwhelmed with the whole move, and Todd jumped on a plane to go there and help. So that's kind of nice to see. This is a Todd that Bronwyn says this is a Todd that no one sees, but I'm going to be honest, this is the Todd that Bronwyn never ever talks about, because the way that Bronwyn has thrown Todd under the bus, it's just, if she had talked more nicely about Todd throughout the whole season, the way that she was talking about him in this like 5-minute clip, I think that we will all have a different impression of him, because all we really have of him is what she's been telling us and the little bits of what we saw of him, you know? So again, Britani starts bringing up all the stuff about her, how Meredith knew that she was like, or to Lisa, sorry, how did Lisa know that I was drinking? And she's giving, Bronwyn the stink eye. And then so Meredith actually speaks up, and she's like, I'm the one that told Lisa. But now Britani looks at Meredith and says, well, who's the one that told you? And it's funny that Bronwyn stays quiet the whole time doing this. You know, she says nothing. This is where I think, like, Britani's not as dumb as, like, people might make her out to be. She knows exactly what happened. It wasn't the situation that was explained. She knows who was there the whole time. She was quite aware, despite her being kind of, like, out of it. But it's just, like, why are we just not being, like, why won't Bronwyn just be like, well, yeah, I was there, and this is what I mentioned. And I think she actually did. But in a confessional, she's like, well, see, I was the one that did tell Meredith, but I never told her that she was puking the whole time like an alcoholic, drunk, blah, blah. I just said, Meredith came to me and said, was Britani throwing up, puking? And I said, yes, she was. She had some drinks. She threw up. She had a couple more drinks, and she ended up throwing up that as well. But I never made it seem like she's some alcoholic. Now, whatever happened, the little nitty-bitty gritty between them that was said, we will never know. But it's clear that the information is coming from one place. And I told you, these two have this kind of intricate relationship, and it's been brought up before, where other people have told Bronwyn something and she's brought it to the forefront to Meredith. I don't know if she thinks that she's being a good person to Meredith. I don't know what she thinks that she's doing, but has been brought up before, and it lands them in a spot like this. This leads into a huge fight. Heather defending Britani leads to how Lisa defends Meredith. And then Whitney I think Whitney will actually want to be on Lisa and Meredith's side on this, but then Lisa ends up jumping in. They start yelling at each other to the point that now the restaurant's like, okay, we're closed, you guys gotta go. And I'm not too sure if there was a line that says, thank God they left, and the guy says it in Greek. I'm not too sure if he really said it in Greek or not, if that was said at that time, but if it was, that's kind of embarrassing. And even Angie was like, that's embarrassing, we just got kicked out. One last note that I did put with this episode before we get into the season finale is it's so nice to see Mary kind of having a good time and loosened up, it's really nice to see. She's come a long way since the first episode, or for the first season. And it's nice that she's just enjoying herself and enjoying life, She's just one of those characters that people just love, whether it's to love to hate or love to love, but we love to have her on our screens. I love her. So now we're heading into episode 16 of Salt Lake City. It's the season finale. This episode's kind of weird. It's a Greek tragedy of some sorts, I guess you could say. There's a girl named Stella who's getting to know the ladies, and she talks to each of them individually and asks about the other ladies in the group and their perceptions of the other ladies in the group. And for the end, she's going to make a show, a production out of it for them. In the meantime, Bronwyn is not happy about Meredith being happy because apparently she went in a full rage. So this is where kind of the beans start to get spilled. I guess the night before it was Mary and Whitney and Bronwyn, they were getting ready for bed, and then Meredith messaged Bronwyn and said, come to my room, I need to talk to you. So when Bronwyn went to the room, Meredith was in a full rage saying, I feel like everyone's plotting against me. I don't like what's being said about me so far. What was said at lunch? And it was the lunch that Bronwyn had with Whitney and Mary. She was definitely being paranoid that the ladies were talking about her, particularly what was said at the lunch. Britani clocks it and says that she thinks that she's always been a good friend to Meredith, but her version of being a good friend means going and telling Meredith what is being said about her. And really, that's not the only definition of being a good friend. Sometimes a good friend doesn't tell you at all what's being said about you because it's just going to disrupt your vibe, your zen, your positive vibes. Like, who cares what people think about you? But we later find out that this is how Bronwyn thinks, what Bronwyn thinks being a good friend is. So this is all she kind of knows how to do with Meredith. And I think that up until a certain point, she kind of was scared of Meredith. And I think that in Bronwyn said, she's like, well, if I'm good with Meredith, then I'm immune to everything, I think it was also her way of kind of getting back at Lisa Barlow, because Lisa and Bronwyn were really good friends, but Lisa and Meredith are also good friends. So Bronwyn thinks that if she can be good friends with Meredith, it will bypass her ever having a relationship with Lisa. I don't know. This is just my assumptions. This is what I think. I think Bronwyn has gotten in far too deep. It's like quicksand. Like you're in too deep now, and it's hard to pull yourself back out. So you're just going to grasp at whatever you can to try to help save you at this point. But she really did throw herself into a pickle that seems to be really tough to get out of. I also find that this happens every season with Meredith, to be honest. She finds one person that she can cling to that will come tell her all the secrets. And then what happens is that person gets shat on, and Meredith gets away looking like the savior, And for some reason, that person that becomes really close to Meredith and is the one that's supposed to be telling Meredith all the secrets, they end up hating Meredith. A resentment just boils over, and they end up telling the entire cast, Meredith is the one that made me do this. Meredith is behind all this. So either Meredith is really smart in picking people like this at the beginning of the season to kind of have her as her ally, or she's just shitty at picking people in general because they all seem to go against her. Meredith and Bronwyn are both at the pool at the same time, so Bronwyn brings it up to Meredith. It seems like they're the only ones out there. Funny how Meredith comes out and then Bronwyn comes out. I don't know how they staged this, or maybe they were the only two that were awake at the time. But Bronwyn was sitting kind of at the lower pool, and then you see Meredith come out of the top pool, and so Bronwyn comes in and approaches her. And they start talking about what happened. And both their stories are very different. Bronwyn's like, you called me to come to you last night. And Meredith was like, no, I did not. You were the one that came to me because you had a bad feeling about today. Bronwyn's like, no, I did not. You called me to come talk to you because you said that you felt weird about what was being said about you, etc., etc. Then Bronwyn calls out Meredith and says, you're the one who called me. You want to see me off camera. She says it like to the camera like that. And she's like, I'm done helping you. We're done. We're not friends anymore. Good luck trying to get other people to do your dirty work for you. No one's going to be as loyal to you and have your back like I did. We're done. And then Bronwyn walks off. Now, on the way to see Angie's cousin, because it's kind of the last thing that they're going to do before they go off for their Greek tragedy kind of show for the night, they go off to meet Angie's cousin, who's her dad's brother's son. And again, now we have another version of Meredith. We have the quiet version of Meredith, and again, everyone is so confused. They're like, what the heck? We just had the most fun Meredith ever, and now she's quiet again. It is a bit confusing to the ladies, but no one really says anything. They kind of just, Angie kind of begged them. She's like, please, let's go into this with really good spirits. My cousin's really looking forward to this. So they go to meet Angie's cousin. And Angie says that, like, I know so much about my dad's side, but I don't know much about my mother's side. And it was just kind of nice to see her family and her reunite with her family. Interesting side note, which is something that I love when I learn these little tidbits every day. And who knew you could learn things from watching The Housewives? A lot of the Greeks that came around the First World War settled in Salt Lake City because of the mining that was going on there. Because, they're not Mormon. They're more like Orthodox. And so the question was, well, why Salt Lake City? There was a lot of mining jobs there. And when one person goes, like, for example, if one person goes there, then they tell their family back home, hey, if you have family coming, tell them to go to Salt Lake City or tell them to go to Utah. So then the word spreads. And as people start coming over, they don't know where else to go but where their own people are, which would happen to be, areas where there's a lot of mining and just jobs for them, And back then it was a lot of mining, lots of ports, lots of stuff like that where they can import, export. So a lot of Greeks ended up in Salt Lake City because of that. So that's kind of interesting to know, because I do know that, like, throughout history, even where I was from in Vancouver, a lot of, for example, I'm Persian, I'm Iranian, a lot of the Persians and Iranians live in North Vancouver or West Vancouver. They just congregate there. A lot of the Greeks are in East Vancouver. A lot of the Italians are in East Vancouver, North Burnaby. Like, you just have areas. Then you have all the Chinese that are, they kind of are everywhere, but a lot more East Vancouver. They have a Chinatown in, like, downtown Vancouver. Like, people just, you have Greeks too. We have the Greeks. Yeah, I think I mentioned that, but they just congregate where there's other people. Part of it is not because, and you get it here in Mexico too. Like, a lot of the, I guess you could say, expats, people that move out of their original countries that they're citizens in, will come, and you'll see a lot of Americans living amongst Americans. I think it's just more comfortable for them. They know the language. They have a community that way. Mind you, when I moved to Mexico, I wanted to make sure that I moved here so that I can kind of get out of the Canadian American sort of mentality. I didn't want to be with other Canadian Americans, although it's nice. Like, we do go to church with a lot of Canadians and Americans, and it's nice to have that sense of community, same language, but at the same time, it's also nice to get into, seeing the other culture and where your new home is. And again, not to get too sidetracked, because that becomes a whole other issue about why people won't learn the language and whatnot. But to get back to the Greeks, back then, that's why there's a huge population of them in Salt Lake City. So that's kind of interesting to know. So now finally on the bus ride home, they're done having some drinks with Angie's cousin, having some appies on the bus ride home. Meredith is still sort of quiet, and so Bronwyn finally bursts. I guess after a few drinks, she's able to burst. And she says, Meredith had a conversation with her, and why Meredith is acting all weird, because she expected me to tell her things that were being said about her at the lunch yesterday between me, Whitney, and Mary. And frankly, I'm sick of her being her little muse or her little bitch to get information out of. And then Heather asked Meredith, is this true? Did you do this? And obviously Meredith denies it. She's like, no, this is where me and Bronwyn kind of have a difference of events that happen, because I didn't try to get information out of her. Bronwyn was really willing to give me the information. But then Bronwyn goes in on Meredith, and then Meredith doesn't respond. I guess maybe just to avoid a conflict, or maybe she just really didn't have anything to say. And Bronwyn says, "This is why you're not saying anything. For once, you're quiet because you know that I'm right." So it ends like that. The bus ride. They go home and they're getting ready for the Greek tragedy, which ends up being like kind of a really funny. I don't know, like. These ladies, all their Salt Lake City in general, all their season finales are so interesting. Like, it's just such a good way to wrap it up. Like, it kind of like puts all the pieces together, like the last few stages of a puzzle, you know. And I think that they all take it like a champ, to be honest. So at this Greek tragedy, they're known as the Sisters of Salt, which seems fitting because gossip grows like mold. And that's the opening statement. And it, again, couldn't be more true of this group. Lisa is claimed to be as one of the elders, and I just saw Lisa's face. I almost died. But to be honest, in her defense, if she's one of the elders, she looks great, you know? Heather's the deflector. Bronwyn has no face, but Bronwyn thinks that she would be loved or something by everyone in the group. It makes no sense. And I say that because sorry, I said that wrong. I'm just reading off my notes. Bronwyn thought that when her kind of section was going to be read, that she was going to be loved by everyone in the group. You know, she was like, you could just see it in her face that she was so angry that something negative was being said about her. But I think she missed the whole point. It wasn't negative about her. It was just how everyone sees her as opposed to how she sees herself. But she was angry. And I don't know where Bronwyn's head is in the clouds. Does she think she's like the loved one of the group, that everyone loves her? And even though, despite what's going on, for example, with her and Meredith would be like, no, she's great. She's so loyal. She tells me everything. No, Bronwyn, you've dug this hole yourself, and it's time to, dig yourself out of it. Bronwyn's thing was that she uses and abuses loyalty and uses it as a weapon against the ladies in the group. And that 1000% makes sense. Lisa again uses wealth as a shield, assuming that she's on a pedestal and that she cannot afford humility, aka saying sorry. She can afford everything in this world except a humility. That was so fitting. Angie, daggers lie beneath her tongue. She slices people with her words. I'm similar to that. People would tell me the same thing. Britani sounds like a childish noise. She clings to the attention of men like a lifeline. That was pretty good. Mary speaks with a blade sharpened by truth, and despite her conviction, she doesn't follow what she preaches by the word of God, aka forgiveness. She preaches forgiveness, but for example, when it comes to Britani, she's like the most unforgiving, so that really made sense. Whitney is perhaps the word of wisdom, but because she's deemed as the putana or the slut of the group, she's not heard. And I think that was like the nicest thing that they said about any of the people, and of all people, Britani, Meredith hides behind her semantics, which was her words. Arguing to her is it's like yelling into a maze, and her behavior is unpredictable. I know someone who uses their words just like that. Like you just cannot, you say something and they twist the words around and make it something else, and it makes no sense. Moral of the story is that you are no one without your sisters, because someone is here because of the other person, and it only works when everyone is together. So I thought in general the play was good. It was nice. You know what I mean? It was kind of nice to see that. But again, obviously this is going to offend the ladies, because now Bronwyn was horrified by what she saw. She's not just loyal to other people because she doesn't know how to be. She also doesn't know how to have anyone who's been loyal to her, because she hasn't. And then again, she goes on a tirade against Todd, and not like it was long, but she's like, well, Todd hasn't been the most loyal to me either. See, these are the things that you throw people under the bus. And I know that you're being honest and just kind of putting your life out there, and it's great, and we kind of are living for the drama, but it doesn't really look good in your home life. It's not going to really, when Todd hears this or sees this back, it's not really going to, what kind of excuse are you going to have for saying something like this out loud on TV, Lisa was being vulnerable as well when she saw it. She's like, and I do like Lisa, and I agree with her that things are a reflection of her accomplishments. I also, when I buy things, and even though I go through spurts in life where I have money and then I don't have money, everything that I've bought for myself is a reflection of an accomplishment that I've done for myself. So maybe I'm broke at the moment, but all the stuff that I have is a reflection of what I did buy for myself when I was making good money. And it has nothing to do with my character. It just has to do that. It reflects that for me, and because I'm the type of person it's so hard for me to be in a state where I'm constantly, I make money, then I lose money, then I make money, and then I lose money. It kind of represents different periods in my life, and I'm proud of myself that I was able to do that. And when I look at the things that I have, I'm like, I can get myself there again. Yes, they are just things, but it's nice to see that I was able to get these things for myself when I had wanted it without question. And then I look at the things I do have, and I'm like, even if I make more money, I don't need to buy any more things. So I already have the things that I want, But, we're in a society where like consumerism is top notch, and there's probably always going to be things that I want. But I can probably go another like 3-4 years without having to buy anything, and I'm good. The point that I'm trying to make is it's a reflection of at that point in my time when I was really doing good, and making far more money than was stupid. And I'm proud of myself that I was at that point. I know that I can get myself there again. That's what my things reflect and represent to me. So sometimes when people tell me to get rid of my stuff, it's like, but you don't know the meaning that it has for me. And for everyone, it's different. I can't be like everybody else. And it was, like if everybody doesn't put value in their things and we're all the same, then are we really individual? I know that there's things. I will always know that they're just things. I always will value my life over the things that I have. But since I have them, I don't just want to get rid of them because they're nice things. I have good taste and they reflect a period of my time when I was able to afford them. So I understand that when it comes to Lisa. I really, really do. She's afraid of... sorry, so this is... it made me... Sorry, let me just get this back to... It's nice to see that Angie and Lisa open up to each other. It made me really emotional, honestly, because I do love their friendship, and I think a lot of friendships are like this, where people are kind of stuck in like the ego, and once you let the ego down, you guys can kind of like find more common ground. I'm also guilty of it. I'm not saying I'm innocent of this or I'm pure of this. It's just nice to see it from another angle because it reminds you that behind the ego, there's actually a friendship that's really waiting to come back together. So that's kind of nice to see. I loved seeing Meredith get vulnerable as well. I think that we see Meredith get vulnerable quite often. My thing is, I don't know what else people want from her. Like, she got vulnerable. She was honest. She said that she was well trained to use her words. I understand this. I know people that are in media or that are in corporate positions where their words have to be precise. I've also learned that me, by having a sharp tongue, that sometimes my words can cut pretty deep. So I have to learn how to... a word that I might say that has no meaning for me might be a huge thing for other people. So how to make my words... how to use my words in a way that is less aggressive, but still gets my point across, With Meredith, it's all about like twisting the words around to make it seem like, she's not at fault, I guess you could say. But some people are really cunning with their words, and she's afraid of betrayal and letting people in, and I felt that. But I'm not sure when it went left, because when Meredith was being vulnerable, I don't understand why Heather really went in on her. Heather really went in on her, and she's like, well, what happened with you and Bronwyn, and do you admit that you were asking Bronwyn? Like, I don't get why in that point where she's being vulnerable like that, does Heather have to come and now question the issue that she had with Bronwyn? Like, could that not have waited? Or could it have just been, as they said, Heather deflecting, so it doesn't get back to her? Mary finally comes clean and sees why we are not telling Meredith the truth. That's what she says. She's like, why are we not telling our friend that we care for her and that we're worried for her? And Meredith does not receive it well at all. Mary tells Meredith, you're committed to being angry, you're committed to being sad. Whitney completely disagrees. Meredith completely disagrees. Meredith is pissed that this is even brought up. She leaves. Okay. Now Whitney chimes in, and when Meredith returns, tells Meredith it resembles what she lived with her dad. I thought that was nice for her to say, because I think that like Whitney has used these words like alcoholic and pill popper, and although not the best words to use, I think that it just, for Meredith, maybe came out of left field, like, because Meredith doesn't keep track of Whitney's life, but when Whitney finally says, because it reminds me of this type of behavior that I've seen before, maybe it will just resonate a little bit better with Meredith, and and at that point Meredith can say, well, I think that you're wrong, or thank you, but I think that you're completely wrong about this. But at least like Whitney was finally able to articulate where those kind of strong assumptions would come from. Then Bronwyn gets to the point that she saw Seth in New York, and she doesn't say that she saw Seth with a woman. Now, I don't know if she already said that she saw Seth with a woman, and they just cut that part out, because then you see Lisa chiming in and see, like, you just almost insinuated that, like, he was doing something, like, the way you made it seem like he was with someone doing something bad. Now, Meredith does mention that she drinks the least out of the ladies, and probably does the least amount of drugs. Then she mentions that Whitney and Heather and Britani have a bag full of pills that they all enjoy to take. Now, I do take medication for my ADHD as well. And if someone uses that against me to insinuate that I do drugs, that would honestly be hurtful. So, whether they did it to Meredith first, and now Meredith is doing back to them, and kind of holding it, like, above their heads, like she has kind of, like, something against them. I just don't think that bringing the whole drugs thing, like, people take drugs for various reasons. Yes, sometimes it's recreational, but other times it's honestly mental health. And I think at the core of all this, one thing that, like, especially ladies at this age should understand is not to bring this against each other. But when it comes to Meredith, I feel like she's just fed up, and she's been backed into a corner, and she has no other device to help her get out other than say, well, I have stuff on them as well, you know? And to be honest, like, that, it kind of ends on a kind of real sour note. Like, I thought it was going to end with all of them kind of taking accountability, because it seemed like it was going that way. Like, it started with Bronwyn kind of getting really, like, honest and vulnerable, and then even what she said, she's like, I only know how to be loyal to people by telling them what I hear about them. I've never had anyone be loyal to me, and I don't even know what that would look like. That's what I do for people, because that's what I think that is what is expected. That's kind of a really honest answer. I appreciate that. And then you see Lisa being honest, and Lisa saying, like, you know, she always had to take care of her sister. She was the older sister, so when she finally was able to do things for herself and to buy things for herself, that's a huge accomplishment for her. And I like that in being vulnerable. And she even said, she's like, when it comes to John, like, John kind of has to put up with her big kind of personality, and, like, she appreciates that about John, you know? So then it went left field, and Meredith wanted to share, because I feel like Heather is the one that, like, messed it all up. We could have just let Meredith, this is what I think could have happened, we could have just let Meredith share, and then everyone could have said their piece about what was said in the tragedy play, and then from there you could ask questions. But from Heather saying that, it deflected from Heather's role, it deflected from Whitney, it deflected from Mary, and it deflected from Angie. So these four didn't have anything to say, even Britani. And it's like, okay. But it's nice to see that at least Bronwyn and Lisa got vulnerable. Now, and Meredith, to a point, she actually did get vulnerable before she got kind of cut off and questioned. I like all these ladies. I like them even more that they're able to be honest, even despite a big fight going on. But that was the end. Closing credits for all the ladies, you know, when they do the kind of the end thing about what's going on in their life next, or up until the next season, till it starts. And pretty much, Heather called this part out. It seemed correct that it's Lisa Barlow and Meredith against the world. Like, and I mentioned this earlier in the episode, the podcast episode, this particular one that I'm speaking on right now, that it seems like Lisa and Meredith are such good friends that when something really is deep, they don't bring it to the cameras. They deal with it off cameras. And then to the cameras, they bring some more surface level issues. I understand that because I'm not on a TV show, and there's a reason that I'm not on a TV show. A, I've never been asked. And B, there might be things in my past I'm just not ready to deal with at the moment if it were to come up. Okay? I think that when you do, from what I've seen, and me being a Housewives lover from the beginning, Real Housewives of Orange County, I think that when you start on these shows, you think that you know, okay, maybe not Orange County at the beginning, but now lately with the shows, the way, the direction that it's going, you realize that parts of your past will come up. But you don't realize the depth of the parts of your past, and you don't realize the people. Like, you always in your head will be like, oh, if I were to ever be famous, I knew exactly who's going to come up and say stuff and bring up things from the past. But maybe it's not those people at all. Maybe it's the people that you would never think that come to the forefront and bring things to the forefront that you would never even imagine. And they really hold much more deeper and sacred things, or secrets that you really did never think would come up, you know? And I think that's the part of it that we're never prepared for, but it happens. Wherever you're seen, even if it's a good interaction, it becomes something negative. I saw her with her business partner, but all of a sudden the business partner's a man, and they were cadoodling, and they had their arms around each other, and it becomes something much more untrue than it actually was. And so I think when it comes to Meredith and Lisa, whether it's just an ego thing, they're older ladies in the group, and that's nothing bad. They're just saying like they do have more of a reputation. I think that as you get older, you kind of have more to lose. They just don't want those things out there, so they kind of deal with things, especially the really, 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 really deep things, more personally. They don't bring it to the camera, and they bring more surface level things to camera to deal with. But maybe the other ladies are aware of that, and that's why it appears fake to them. Now, someone that I know really throws things out there, but still sort of hides it, I would say be Bronwyn. She really like puts her stuff out there, but everything that she does makes her look good in the end. So that's why I think it's a bit fake. I think Whitney does a good job of putting her stuff all the way out there. I think Britani does, although Britani doesn't think that she is, you know. Britani has yet to kind of really dive in to express how she feels about everything. She just kind of explains the situations as they happen. But as much as I like Meredith and Lisa, I do find that they kind of like hide a bunch of stuff, you know. Everything does appear to be perfect. And yeah, John and this and that. And that's fine. That's your prerogative. But you are in a show and you just can't expect other people to kind of like... This is the whole thing that I was saying earlier about Meredith when she kind of gets her little person for the season. Because it's Lisa and Meredith and they kind of have this shtick where they don't bring much to the camera, the other ladies start to get resentful. And then they start exposing everything that they've seen or that they've heard because they're resentful that they have to bring everything to the cameras and these other people don't. And this is not the first Housewives franchise that we've seen this happen to or happen on. And it's interesting to see the dynamics in all the Housewives franchises, how people will kind of go against, for example, Beverly Hills. People got really... Garcelle included, got really kind of angry with Kyle that she wasn't really exposing much, you know? So you do get resentful because you feel like you're putting yourself out there on a limb and on the line and nobody else is, or the other person isn't, or there's one person in the group that isn't. But it's like, how can you gauge? Are you that person's best friend and you live with them that you can gauge really how much that they're putting on the line and how much that they're not, you know? And what is like, who's the measure? Like, who's able to give a measure of you're allowed to put this out there, but not allowed to put that out there, you know? Just because you have doesn't mean that the other person has to. Like, and I find that it's actually always like that because somebody else has, they feel like the other person can do the same. But then there might be something that this person that's put everything out there will not put out, whereas somebody else has. I think it's just, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just saying, like, how do we gauge what level to which people will go all the way out there to expose their life and their secrets, you know? Like, who has has there been a scientific measure done for something like that, you know? Because every Housewives franchise goes through this every single season. By the end of the season, they're mad at a group of them, and for this one not exposing as much as they should have, and it just goes this vernacular back and forth, and it's just kind of, it becomes so toxic. But I guess that's why we love the show. Salt Lake City can get pretty crazy without getting too crazy, so that's what I like about it. But that's it. And then we're done. That was the season finale, and now we just go into the 3-part reunion. So it's going to be exciting to see how that goes. Looks like it's going to be filled with drama and whatnot. So, yay. Finally caught up with Salt Lake City. Wow. It is one of my favorites against the colors, and it'd be nice to see them maybe film in another season, because I know every time they film, it's like winter. I think going into spring or something along those lines. But yeah, it was great. Great season. I know that Jen Shaw's not coming back. She did get released in December. I don't really keep up much with this type of stuff. But yeah, it was a good season again. I keep saying it. But excited to see how the reunion goes next week. So with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for keeping up with me with this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do as many of these Housewives recaps for... the season's coming up. I might just have to take a back seat to some of them because as much as I love it and it keeps my mind occupied, there's so many other aspects of my podcast that I want to get to, such as like my personal stuff, and it's just fun for me to do this because like I think my life's messed up with my mental health and my ADHD, and you look at all these other people's lives and you're like, yeah, no, it's not that messed up or it's not as bad as I thought, you know. But yeah, I don't know how it's going to look moving forward. For now, I'm just going to continue recapping the shows I do have on my roster, and From there, we'll go on. If you guys have any suggestions or want to make any comments, please feel free to do so. Please catch me on my socials. I would love if you guys give me a subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. That'd mean a whole lot to me. If you could even subscribe on my YouTube, that would be fantastic for me. And just, send me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking so far and if you have any suggestions moving forward. That being said, the next set of recaps I will bring is Vanderpump Rules. That's a good one. More along my age group, but I feel like I'm it's just, you'll see when I get there. With that being said, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll be back with Vanderpump Rules.